In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this very simple linen stitch shawl. For materials, I have two colors of yarn. Now I'm using worsted weight yarn for this video just because the stitches tend to show up a little bit better on camera. You can use whatever yarn and hook combination that you prefer. Since this shawl is fully customizable, you can make it as long or as short as you wish using whatever yarn that you like. You can also use a color changing yarn or just make it in solid color too. I'm using a 5mm hook. And as an optional tool, I have a stitch marker here. I'm only going to use this for the first few rows to identify that center stitch. So let's get started. Before I get started, this shawl does use the linen stitch. If you haven't used the linen stitch before, or if you're unfamiliar with it, I have a video tutorial. I will link it in the description below. I recommend watching that video just to kind of get an idea of how this stitch works before we start this shawl. So I'm going to begin with a slip knot and place it on my hook, and I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to be placing my stitches in that very first chain, and there's not very many. Single crochet. This is US term single crochet. So I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over and pull it through. 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. Then I'm going to chain 2. And then going back into that same chain, I'm going to work another single crochet. Like I said, a very tiny little row. That is row 1. So what I'm going to do is just simply place my stitch marker in that chain 2, and that's just going to be used as an identifier for that space for the first few rows. For row number 2, I'm going to turn my work and chain 1. I'm going to be placing my first stitch in that single crochet, the last one that we made. I'm going to make another single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 1. And now I'm going to work in that chain 2 space that we marked. So I'm just going to slip that out and place a single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in that chain 2 space. So we're going to do that single crochet, chain 2, single crochet every time we come to that chain 2 space in the center, and that's going to become the center of the shawl. So now I'm going to work up along the other side here, chain 1, and then work a single crochet on top of that last single crochet. Now normally I would change colors after the second row, but I'm going to continue to go in the same color. So that is the end of row 2. For row 3, once again, I'm going to chain up and work a single crochet in that first single crochet. So we're always going to begin with a single crochet in the single crochet and end with a single crochet in that last single crochet. Otherwise, we're going to be working in the spaces in between, and this row is where we start working in the spaces in between. So I have my chain space. If you remember, we did that chain space in the last one, the last row. I'm going to chain 1, and working in between those 2 single crochets, I'm going to place another single crochet. Chain 1 again. I'm going to skip that next single crochet, and we've come to our chain space again. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out, and once again, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. I'm going to put my stitch marker back in there real quick. And like I said, after a few rows, you'll be able to see that chain to be able to identify it. You won't have to use the stitch marker. So I'm going to chain one. There's my single crochet. I'm going to skip over that and work in the chain space in between. So right here, I'm going to work a single crochet in that chain space, chain one, and once again, this is what I'm going to call our anchor stitch. I'm going to single crochet right into that first single crochet. And that's the end of row 3. So if you look now, we have 3 single crochets on each side. So that's a great way to help keep track of how many rows you've done or how many stitches you have. Whatever row number you're on, that's how many single crochets you would have. And then you have 1 chain in between each of those. So I have 3 singles and then 2 chains on each side. Row number 4, this is going to be our repeat row. So we're going to continue to do this same thing for the rest of our shawl. So this is how you can adjust the size of your shawl to as long or short as you want, just by repeating this row. It's also going to be the row at the end. I'm going to show you how to change colors. So I'm going to chain one, and once again, working in that single crochet. This is the only time at the very beginning and the very end that we're going to actually work into a stitch. Otherwise, we're working in those chain one spaces. So chain one, single crochet in that chain one space, chain one, single crochet, chain one. I'm going to skip over that single crochet and work in that chain two space again. So single crochet, chain two, and single crochet. Place my stitch marker back in there. And once again, if I do a stitch count, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 single crochets, 3 chains in between. And since we're on row 4, that's what we're looking for. So I'm going to chain 1, skip that single crochet and work in the next chain space. Chain 1, skip that single crochet, and then chain 1. Now I've reached the end where my last single crochet is at. Here's where I'm going to show you how to change colors. So I'm going to begin with a single crochet, insert in that stitch, yarn over and pull through. I have 2 loops on the hook, but instead of finishing that stitch with that color, I'm going to switch with my next color. So I'm just going to simply place the yarn over the top and pull that strand through, and then flip it over. I can go and kind of pull these strands down a little bit. You can also kind of fix that part after you've done a couple rows. I'm going to chain 1. This is row number 5. And we go right back down into that single crochet. Chain 1, working in that chain space between the 2. Chain 1, working in the chain space. Now I've reached my center chain 2 space. Take my stitch marker out, skip that single, and work single, chain 2, and single. I'll place my stitch marker back in here. Chain 1, skip the single, and work in the next chain. So after a while, it becomes a little easier to remember where you need to work your stitches. So we're going to be only working in those chain 1 spaces until we reach the end, where we're going to place that vinyl stitch right here, chain 1 into the top of that single crochet. Now you can also see where we're starting to get that little zigzag look of the linen stitch. So I'm going to do one more row here with our new color and show you how to change colors again. So chain 1, single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in between the stitches, reached my chain 2 space. I'm going to chain 1, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. Place that back down in there. You can kind of see now where our center is at. So if you don't want to keep that stitch marker in there, you can move it off to the side, but if you'd like to keep it for a few more rows or even until the end, if it helps you out, you definitely can. Chain 1 in between, chain 1. So now I'm at the end. I have my 2 single crochets. They're kind of squished together on the ends here. I'm going to work in between the 2 of those, chain 1, and single crochet in the top. And then once again, I'm going to be changing colors. So I'm going to insert underneath into that actual stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook. Now if you're just working with 2 colors and you're not changing colors again, I'm going to be putting a border stitch around the whole perimeter of this shawl when I finish. So I'm just going to carry this yarn up because I'm going to be working right over the top of that with a border stitch. So I'm just going to carry it up along the side here, and I'm going to pull that just kind of not too tight, but just a little bit. I'm going to chain 1 and turn. Now I'm going to continue to work in the pattern for a few more rows, and I'm going to be making kind of like a little mini shawl here, and I will show you how it looks and how to finish this after a few more rows. So if you like, you can pause the video and continue to work if you like, and I'll show you what to do after a few more rows. Here is my little mini shawl after a few more rows. I'm going to show you now how to finish this up. I'm going to put a border around the whole outside of the shawl. You don't have to use a border, it's completely optional. I'm going to show you how to do that. If you did carry the strands up the side, if you were using 2 colors, it will also help hide those. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this up and leave a long loop, and I'm going to set that gray yarn out of the way. I still have my yellow yarn attached here, so I'm just going to cut that. First thing I'm going to do is weave in my ends before I make my border. So I'm just going to load my tapestry needle with my yarn, and I'm going to work on the back side here and just go down into those stitches. And weave those ends in. You can use whatever method of end weaving that you prefer. And I'm going to snip that here. So So I'm going to continue to weave in these last two ends here. So if you'd like you to pause the video, and I'll show you how to make the border stitch next. Now I have all of my extra ends woven in. So I'm going to take this long loop, place it back on my crochet hook. I'm going to be working along the top first. That's probably the most difficult part, and then working along the sides here. I'm just going to do a simple single crochet border. You can use whatever border you prefer, if you prefer to use a half double or double, or if you even want to use something a little fancier like a shell or scallop border. You can use whatever border you prefer. So I'm going to chain one to start, and each of these rows I'm going to place a single crochet on the end. So for every color change, I know that I have 2 single crochets that I need to do. So I'm just going to go right underneath, single crochet, and then in this next one, single crochet. I'm working kind of loosely here. You don't want to work too tight because it's going to squish your stitches up at the top. Now I have one of my yarn floats here in the back. And make sure that I try to go underneath that yarn float as well as the stitch. Single crochet. That one was actually kind of really loose there. Let's try that again. Single crochet. I'm going to place one more going over the top of that float again. Single crochet. Now I've reached my gray. So I have a little bit of that gray left over here as well as that yellow color starting. So I'm going to go underneath both of those, kind of just making a little envelope to smash them all into. I'm going to do one more in that gray. Just working along the top. So now I have 2 here in the yellow color. And another 2. Just going to continue to work along the top here. Just like that. You can see that I'm starting to make that little border. I have 2 more. I reach my center. And on this side, I did not carry any of those strands because I carried them all on one side over here. So this one's going to be a little easier. I don't have to worry about those strands. I'll do the next 2. Some of these you might have to get a little creative on where you place your stitches. That was a little tight right there. Just going to single crochet, continue the top. Last 2, and work right in that top right there. I'm going to chain 1 and work along the sides here. This one's going to be really easy. I'm just going to put a single crochet into each of those stitches along the sides. So if you like, you can pause the video. I'm going to continue to work down to the center. When I get to the center, I am going to do a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in that chain 2 space again, just because I like how it looks. You can just place a single crochet in that center if you prefer. I'm going to work along this side and continue to work back up, and I will meet you back here and show you how to finish. So I worked along the sides here. I did place a single crochet, chain 2 single crochet in that center stitch, but like I said, you can do whatever you prefer in that spot. I have 2 stitches left here. I'm going to work my last 2. And then I'm going to chain up again and slip stitch into the top, that very first single crochet. I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving a strand to weave in. Oops. If I can get it there. There we go. And I'm just going to yarn over and pull that through to make a nice little secure knot. And I'll just go ahead and weave that in. I just wove in my end, and there is my cute little mini linen stitch shawl. And you can block this after you finish using whatever method you prefer. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more crochet tutorials.